35 years I spent at Memorial General, bringing new lives into this world and comforting those leaving it. I devoted everything to my career as a nurse and to raising my daughter, Jennifer. But the day I retired, she looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, we need to talk about your living arrangements." That same night, I found myself setting up a cot in their unfinished basement, surrounded by boxes and holiday decorations, listening to the footsteps of my daughter's perfect family above me. The basement that flooded every spring. The basement with no bathroom. She said it was temporary, just until they figured things out. But I knew better. My own daughter had relegated me to the bottom of her priority list, quite literally. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What she didn't know was that while I was working those overnight shifts and holiday weekends, I'd been making some very particular investments. You see, I wasn't just Barbara Wilson, the nurse who lived in her daughter's basement. I was Barbara Wilson, the woman who now owned 6 properties on Evergreen Street, including the house directly across from my daughter's, and I was just getting started. I never expected to find myself in this situation at 60 years old. After decades of 12-hour shifts at Memorial General, bringing hundreds of babies into the world as a labor and delivery nurse, my retirement was supposed to be peaceful, dignified, perhaps even a little boring. I'd spent my entire adult life caring for others, my patients, my late husband Robert, who passed after a long battle with cancer 15 years ago, and especially our daughter, Jennifer. Jennifer was our miracle baby after years of trying. When she finally arrived, I poured every ounce of love I had into raising her. Ballet lessons, summer camps, college tuition at Northwestern. We stretched every dollar to give her opportunities. I never had. Even after Robert died, I kept going. I picked up extra shifts, worked holidays, and set aside my own grief to make sure Jennifer completed her education. When she married Derek, I helped them with the down payment on their house on Evergreen Street. It was a beautiful colonial in Lakeside Estates, the kind of neighborhood I could never have afforded when I was starting out. The day they moved, and Jennifer hugged me tight and said, "Mom, we'll always have room for you here. You'll never be alone." Those words comforted me through the hardest days at the hospital, through the COVID pandemic when we were all running on empty, through the endless double shifts when my feet screamed in pain, through the lonely nights at home when Robert's absence still felt like an open wound. I was building toward something, a retirement surrounded by family, watching my grandchildren Emma and Tyler grow up, maybe even traveling a little with the modest savings I'd accumulated. What no one knew, not even Jennifer, was that I'd had a special relationship with one of my long-term patients. Harold Thompson was a wealthy businessman who'd spent months in our care after a serious heart attack. During those long nights, when fear and mortality hung heavy in the air, I'd sit with him during my breaks. We'd talk about his life, his regrets, his hopes. I never expected anything from those conversations. It was just what I did for all my patients. Providing comfort was as important as providing medical care. On the day Harold was discharged, he squeezed my hand and said, "Barbara, you're one of the few genuine people I've ever met. Most people saw my money first and me second. You just saw a scared old man who needed kindness." I didn't think much of it at the time. 2 years later, I received a call from a law firm. Harold had passed away, and to my shock, he'd left me a substantial sum in his will, $2.5 million. I nearly dropped the phone when the lawyer told me, Barbara Wilson, suddenly with more money than I'd ever dreamed of having. But I kept it quiet. I didn't want it to change how people saw me, especially Jennifer. I wanted her to respect me for my work, not for an unexpected windfall. So I continued working at the hospital for 5 more years, until my knees couldn't take the long shifts anymore. I contributed to Jennifer and Derek's mortgage. I paid for Emma's dance classes and Tyler's soccer equipment. I kept living in my Modest two-bedroom ranch house across town, driving my 10-year-old Toyota, and wearing scrubs that had seen better days. The day I finally retired, the hospital threw me a beautiful party. 35 years of service, recognized with a plaque and a cake. Diane, my closest friend from the maternity ward, hugged me and whispered, "What are you going to do with all that free time, Barb?" "Spend it with my family," I said confidently. Jennifer's been saying for years that once I retired, I should sell my house and move in with them. They have that big house, and I could help with the kids. Diane's smile faltered slightly. "Are you sure that's what you want? You've always been so independent." "Of course," I assured her. "Jennifer and I have always been close, and those grandkids are my world." That evening, Jennifer and Derek took me out to dinner at Riverside Grill to celebrate my retirement. The kids were with a sitter, so it was just the three of us, toasting to my new chapter. I was exhausted but happy, already imagining mornings spent making pancakes with my grandchildren instead of hospital rounds. "Mom," Jennifer said, setting down her wine glass, "Derek and I have been talking. Since you're retiring, it makes sense for you to sell your house. Property values are up, and that place is too big for just you." I smiled, relieved we were on the same page. "I've been thinking the same thing, honey. I could help with the kids, be there when they get home from school." Jennifer and Derek exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "Actually," Derek said, clearing his throat, "we've been looking into some of those new retirement communities. Golden Meadows just opened last year, and their units are still available." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Retirement community? I'm only 60, Derek. I just retired from work, not from life." "Mom," Jennifer leaned forward, using the same patient tone I'd heard her use with Emma when explaining why she couldn't have a puppy. "These places are really nice now. They have activities, outings. You'd be with people your own age." "My own age?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "Jennifer, I don't need to be warehoused with other old people. I thought I'd be moving. In with you, like we've talked about for years." Another look passed between them. "Well," Jennifer said slowly, "we did think about that. But Emma's getting older, she needs her own space, and with Derek's mother planning to visit more often—" She trailed off. "I see," I said, though I didn't see it all. I remembered the day I'd written them a check for $30,000 for their down payment, how Jennifer had hugged me and promised there would always be room for me. The house had 4 bedrooms. Emma and Tyler each had their own, and they had a guest room that sat empty except for the occasional visit from Derek's mother, who lived in Florida and came up maybe twice a year. "We do have the basement," Derek offered, as if he were being generous. "We could fix it up for you. It's not ideal, but it would be temporary, just until we figure something else out." The basement. I'd been in their basement. It was unfinished, with concrete floors and exposed pipes. They used it for storage and laundry. There was no bathroom down there, not even a half bath. "The basement," I repeated, my voice hollow. "It's better than spending all that money on Golden Meadows," Jennifer said quickly. "Those places are expensive, Mom. This way you could save your retirement money. We know you don't have much." If only they knew, I thought bitterly. If only they knew about the $2.5 million sitting in investment accounts, carefully managed by the financial advisor Harold's lawyer had recommended. If only they knew that I'd been quietly researching real estate in their neighborhood, thinking about buying a small condo nearby so I could be close but still independent. But they didn't ask. They didn't even consider what I might want or what resources I might have. They just assumed, the way they always had, that Mom would make do, that Mom would sacrifice, that Mom would accept whatever scraps of consideration they tossed her way. "When would you want me to move?" I asked, my appetite gone. "Well," Jennifer brightened, clearly relieved I wasn't arguing. "We were thinking maybe next week. That way you could list your house while the spring market is hot. Derek's cousin is a realtor. He could help you get it ready to sell. Next week. They wanted me to leave my home of 20 years, sell it, and move into their unfinished basement in 7 days. I'll need some time, I said, fighting to keep my voice from shaking. There's a lot to pack up. I can come help, Jennifer offered, though her tone suggested it was the last thing she wanted to do. Maybe next Saturday, though Emma has dance in the morning and Tyler has soccer in the afternoon. Don't worry about it, I said. I've managed on my own for a long time. I'll figure it out. As we left the restaurant, I watched Jennifer and Derek walk ahead of me to the parking lot, his arm around her waist, their heads bent together in conversation. They'd already moved on, problem solved. Mom would take the basement. Mom would make it work. Mom always did. I drove home that night to my small but comfortable house, the one I'd maintained on my own since Robert died. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I walked through each room slowly, touching the familiar walls, looking at the photographs that documented our family's life. Jennifer's graduation pictures, her wedding photo, the first pictures of Emma and then Tyler as newborns, both delivered by my own hands at Memorial General. I'd given everything to my family, my time, my energy, my savings. I'd worked night shifts so Jennifer could go to the best schools. I'd foregone vacations so she could attend summer programs. I'd worn the same clothes for years so she could have the latest fashions. And now, in my time of need, she offered me a basement. A cold, damp basement with no bathroom and no privacy. That night, I made a decision. If Jennifer thought so little of me, if my own daughter valued me so cheaply, then it was time to show her, and myself, exactly what Barbara Wilson was worth. The next morning, I called Brian Cooper, the real estate agent I'd been consulting about properties in Lakeside Estates. "Brian," I said when he answered, "remember that house on Evergreen Street you showed me last month? The one across from my daughter? The Coleman place?" "Sure, Barbara. Beautiful property, but it sold last week. I was going to call you." "What about the Reynolds house 3 doors down? Has that gone on the market yet?" "Funny you should ask. Mrs. Reynolds just called me yesterday. They're moving to Arizona to be near their son. House needs some updates, but the location is prime." "I want it," I said firmly. "And I want to make an offer on the Madison property at the end of the street, too, if it's still available." There was a pause on the line. "Barbara," Brian said carefully, "those are both million-dollar properties. The Madison place is listed at $1.2 million. I'm aware of the prices, Brian. I'd like to make cash offers on both, and I want to close quickly, within 30 days if possible." Another longer pause. "Cash offers for both properties." "That's right," I said, a strange sense of calm settling over me. "And Brian? I'd appreciate your discretion in this matter. I'd prefer my daughter not know about these purchases just yet." "Of course," he said, professionalism overriding his obvious curiosity. "I'll draw up the paperwork right away. Would you like to see the Reynolds house again before making an offer?" "No need," I said. "I know exactly what I'm buying." After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, looking out at the small garden I'd tended for 2 decades. The tulips were just beginning to push through the soil, reaching for the spring sunshine. I'd always found peace in watching things grow, in nurturing life, whether it was plants, patients, or my own child. But some plants, I reflected, grow better when transplanted to new soil. Sometimes what seems like an upheaval is actually an opportunity for deeper roots, for stronger blooms. I spent the next week packing my most treasured possessions and donating the rest. I didn't tell Jennifer about my real estate ventures. Instead, I agreed to her timeline and began preparing to move into her basement. Let her think she had the upper hand. Let her believe her mother was exactly who she thought I was. A retired nurse with a small pension and limited options. The Sunday before my move, I visited Harold's grave at Oak Ridge Cemetery. I brought daffodils, his favorite. "I don't think this is what you intended when you left me that money," I said to the quiet stone. But I'm finally standing up for myself. "Harold, better late than never, right?" I could almost hear his gravelly laugh, could almost see him nodding approvingly. Harold had built his fortune by seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles. He would understand what I was doing. The following Saturday, Jennifer and Derek helped move my few remaining possessions into their basement. They'd cleared a space, among the holiday decorations and sports equipment, set up a cot, and brought down an old dresser for my clothes. There was a small television that Tyler had outgrown and a folding screen for privacy when I changed. "It's just temporary, Mom," Jennifer assured me as I surveyed what would be my new home. "Just until we figure out something better." I nodded, saying nothing about the closing scheduled for the Reynolds house the following Tuesday. Or about the offer I'd made on the Jackson property 2 doors down, which had just come on the market. Or about the meetings I'd been having with contractors about renovations. "Thank you for making space for me," I said instead, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. That first night in the basement was one of the longest of my life. I could hear every footstep above me, every flush of the toilet, every burst of laughter from the family watching a movie together, a family that hadn't thought to invite Grandma to join them. The basement was cold, the cot uncomfortable, and every time I needed to use the bathroom, I had to climb the stairs to the main floor, passing through their living spaces like an intruder. I lay awake until past midnight, listening to the house settle and thinking about what was to come. I wasn't just buying houses on Evergreen Street as an investment, though they would certainly appreciate in value. I was buying power, respect, options. And just maybe, a way to teach my daughter the lesson she so desperately needed to learn. The next morning, I rose early, dressed in the bathroom upstairs while the family still slept, and slipped out to meet Diane for coffee at the morning brew. "You did what?" Diane nearly spit out her latte when I told her about my real estate purchases. "Shh," I cautioned, glancing around the coffee shop. Oak Ridge was a small town and news traveled fast. I don't want Jennifer finding out until everything's finalized. "But Barbara," Diane lowered her voice, leaning across the table. "3 houses? On your daughter's street? Where she put you in the basement? That's poetic justice?" I offered with a small smile. Diane shook her head, but she was smiling too. "It's something, all right. But what are you going to do with 3 houses? You can only live in one." I stirred my coffee thoughtfully. "The Reynolds place will be mine. It's directly across from Jennifer's house. I'll be able to see her front door from my living room window. The other 2 are investments. I might rent them out or sell them once they've appreciated a bit more. Brian says property values in lakeside estates are expected to rise another 15% this year. And Jennifer has no idea? About the houses or the money? None, I confirmed. She and Derek assume I'm living off my pension and whatever I get from selling my old house. They've already started making comments about how I should contribute to the household expenses since I'm living with them now. Diane's expression darkened. "After everything you've done for them? That down payment? Those kids' activities? Your own daughter expects you to pay rent for a basement cot." "Apparently so," I said, the hurt still fresh. "Last night, Derek mentioned that their water bill will go up with another person showering every day. He suggested I might want to chip in for utilities." "That's outrageous," I nodded, sipping my coffee. "It is. But you know what's funny, Diane? In a way, I'm grateful. If they had been even slightly more generous, slightly more considerate, I might have accepted it. I might have settled for a corner of their lives, grateful for whatever scraps of attention they tossed my way. But this?" I gestured vaguely, encompassing the situation. This was too much, or rather, too little, and it woke me up. So, what's your plan? Diane asked. When do you reveal your secret millionaire identity? I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. Not for a while yet. First, I want to see how far they'll go, how they'll treat me when they think I have nothing. I want to understand exactly who my daughter has become when she thinks no one's watching. Diane reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Just be careful, Barb. Don't let bitterness eat you up. Jennifer is still your daughter. Yes. I agreed, feeling a familiar ache in my chest. She is. And that's why this matters so much. Because whatever happens next, we'll both have to live with it for the rest of our lives. As I walked back to Jennifer's house, past the properties that would soon be mine, past the neighbors who didn't yet know that the old lady from the basement would soon be one of the largest property owners on the street, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Not since Harold had first taken my hand and thanked me for seeing him as a person, not a wallet. I felt powerful. I felt seen. And most surprisingly of all, I felt free. 2 weeks into my basement living arrangement, I began to understand exactly how Jennifer and Derek viewed me. It wasn't just the basement. It was 1,000 tiny indignities, a constant stream of reminders that I was no longer a person with needs and desires, but an inconvenience to be managed. The first Monday after I moved in, I woke at 6 a.m., a habit, from decades of early hospital shifts. I quietly made my way upstairs, careful not to wake anyone, and put on a pot of coffee. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my cup, watching the sunrise through the bay window, when Jennifer stumbled in, still in her pajamas. "Mom," she said, her voice sharp with annoyance. "You're in Derek's spot." I looked around the empty kitchen, confused. His spot? He sits there every morning to check his emails before work. He likes the morning light. She gestured impatiently to another chair. "Could you move, please? He'll be down any minute." I moved, of course. It was their house, their kitchen table. But something in me hardened as I watched Derek take his seat 15 minutes later, not even acknowledging my presence as he scrolled through his phone. That night at dinner, Derek announced they would be hosting his boss for dinner that weekend. "It's important for my promotion," he explained to the children. "So everyone needs to be on their best behavior." "What can I do to help?" I offered. I could make my pot roast. It was always a hit at hospital potlucks. Jennifer and Derek exchanged a look I was beginning to recognize, a look that said, "How do we handle Mom?" "Actually," Jennifer said delicately, "I've already planned the menu. I'm doing salmon with Derek's favorite risotto." "I can help prepare it," I suggested. "After raising you on my own and cooking for your father all those years, I'm pretty handy in the kitchen." Another look. "That's okay, Mom. The kitchen gets so crowded, but you know what would be really helpful? If you could maybe not be around during the dinner. Mr. Peterson is very focused on family image, and explaining why my mother lives in our basement might be awkward." I stared at her, waiting for her to realize what she'd just said, to hear herself asking her mother to hide from her dinner guests like some shameful secret. But she just smiled, waiting for my agreement. "Where exactly should I go?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Maybe the library or a movie? I could give you some money for dinner out." Tyler, my 7-year-old grandson, looked up from his plate. "But I want Grandma to stay. She promised to play Lego Batman with me after dinner." "Another night, honey," Jennifer said firmly. "Saturday is Mommy and Daddy's important dinner." I nodded slowly. "I understand. I'll make myself scarce." Saturday, I didn't go to the library or a movie. Instead, I met with Brian Cooper at his real estate office to sign the closing documents for the Reynolds house. In 30 days, I would own the beautiful colonial directly across from Jennifer's home. "Are you excited?" Brian asked as I signed the final paper. "It's a beautiful property." "Very," I said, feeling a genuine smile spread across my face. "When can I start renovations?" You have full access starting today, Brian confirmed. Though the actual deed transfer will take a few weeks to process, the sellers have already moved out. Here are the keys. I held the heavy ring in my palm, feeling a sense of rightness settle over me. I'd like to see it now, if that's possible. Brian drove me to Evergreen Street, carefully parking his luxury sedan 2 blocks away. Just in case your daughter might recognize my car, he explained, though I doubt she'd expect to see it outside the Reynolds house with you. We walked through the empty house together, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. It was a beautiful home. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a sun-filled kitchen that looked out onto a spacious backyard with mature oak trees. The master bedroom had a sitting area with a bay window that faced directly toward Jennifer's house across the street. The previous owners kept it in excellent condition, Brian noted as we toured. But you mentioned wanting to make some updates? Yes, I said, already envisioning the changes. I want to renovate the kitchen entirely, open it up to the dining room, new appliances, granite countertops. The master bathroom needs updating too, and I'd like to convert the 4th bedroom into a proper home office. Brian raised his eyebrows. That's quite an investment on top of the purchase price. I smiled. I know exactly what I'm doing, Brian. I want this house to be the jewel of the neighborhood, and I want it done quickly, 6 weeks maximum. That's an aggressive timeline, Barbara. Contractors around here are usually booked months in advance. Money talks, I said simply. Find me the best, and tell them I'll pay a premium for speed and quality. As we finished the tour, I paused by the front window, looking across at Jennifer's house. From this vantage point, I could see their driveway filled with cars. Derek's boss had arrived with his wife, and it looked like another couple had joined them as well. The dinner party was in full swing. When do you plan to tell your daughter? About your purchase, Brian asked, following my gaze. Not for a while yet, I said. Let's keep this between us for now. That evening, I returned to Jennifer's house well after 10 p.m., slipping quietly into the basement. I could hear them upstairs, still entertaining, laughter floating down through the floorboards. I sat on my cot in the dim light, keys to my new house clutched in my hand, and smiled into the darkness. The following week brought new indignities. Emma, my 10-year-old granddaughter, came home from school upset. Her science fair project was due in 3 days, and she hadn't started it. I can help you, I offered immediately. Before becoming a nurse, I'd studied biology in college and had always maintained a love for science. What's your topic? Emma brightened. We're supposed to demonstrate a natural process. I was thinking about plant growth or maybe something with weather. We spent the afternoon brainstorming ideas, finally settling on a demonstration of water, filtration using different types of soil and pollutants. Emma was excited, and I felt useful for the first time since moving in. That evening, I mentioned to Jennifer that I'd been helping Emma with her project. You what? Jennifer sat down, her wine glass with a thud. Mom, you can't just take over her homework. I didn't take over, I explained. We brainstormed ideas together and I helped her gather materials. It's a good project, and she's excited about it. Derek and I have a system for the kids' schoolwork, Jennifer said, her voice tight. Emma needs to learn to manage her time. Better, not have her grandmother swoop in and save the day. She asked for help, I pointed out, and she was upset. That's not the point, Jennifer said. Derek and I are trying to teach the kids responsibility. You can't just undermine our parenting because you're bored and looking for something to do. The accusation stung. That's not fair, Jennifer. I was trying to help my granddaughter with a project she cares about. Well, don't, she snapped. If Emma needs help with homework, she can ask me or Derek. We're her parents. I nodded, swallowing the hurt. I understand. The next day, as I was folding my laundry in the basement, I overheard Jennifer and Derek talking in the kitchen above me. I don't know how much longer this arrangement is going to work, Jennifer was saying, her voice carrying clearly through the heating vent. She's constantly overstepping. It's just until we find her a suitable retirement community, Derek replied. The one in Westfield has a 6-month waiting list, but they said a spot might open up sooner. 6 months of her in the basement? Derek, I'm already going crazy. She's always there, always watching, always offering to help with things we don't need help with. Look, your mom doesn't have anywhere else to go, Derek said. Unless you want her on the street, we're stuck with this situation for now. But I've been thinking, we should ask her to contribute more to the household expenses. Your brother pays $600 a month for his 1-bedroom apartment. Your mom has it pretty good here for free. She's in the basement, Derek. Still, heat, electricity, water, internet, it all costs money. And we're feeding her too. $300 a month seems fair to me. There was a pause. You're right, Jennifer finally said. She should contribute something. After all, she's saving a fortune by not having to maintain her own place anymore. I sat on my cot, the half-folded laundry forgotten in my lap. $300 a month to live in a basement with no bathroom, no privacy, and apparently, no right to help my own granddaughter with her homework. That evening, while Jennifer and Derek were still at work, I walked across the street to check on the progress of my new home. The renovation team had started that morning, and already the kitchen was being gutted, the outdated cabinets piled on the front lawn for removal. Carlos, the project manager, greeted me with a handshake. Mrs. Wilson, we're making good progress. The demo team is working fast, and the plumbers are scheduled for tomorrow to reroute the pipes for the new kitchen layout. Excellent, I said, walking through the chaos with satisfaction. And the timeline? Still on track for 6 weeks? Absolutely, Carlos confirmed. With the crew size you've approved and the overtime budget, we'll meet that deadline barring any unforeseen structural issues. Perfect, I said. And remember, discretion is important. If any of the neighbors ask, especially from that house across the street, I pointed to Jennifer's house, just say the new owner prefers to remain private for now. Understood, Mrs. Wilson. Not a word. I toured the house, approving material samples and discussing details with Carlos. The more time I spent in this space, the more I could envision my new life here. A life of dignity and independence, directly in view of the daughter who thought I belonged in a basement. When I returned to Jennifer's that evening, I found her, and Derek waiting for me at the kitchen table. Their expressions were serious, the kind of forced solemnity people adopt when they're about to say something unpleasant but want to appear reasonable. Mom, we need to talk about the living arrangements, Jennifer began. Derek and I have been discussing it, and we think it's fair that you contribute to the household expenses while you're staying with us. I sat down across from them, folding, my hands on the table. I see. What did you have in mind? Derek cleared his throat. We were thinking $300 a month would be fair. That would cover your share of utilities, internet, and food. $300, I repeated. For the basement, without a bathroom. Mom, Jennifer said, her voice taking on that condescending tone I was growing to hate. You know how expensive things are these days. We're carrying the mortgage, the kids' activities, saving for their college. This is still much cheaper than any apartment you'd find on your own. And far cheaper than those retirement communities, Derek added. The one in Westfield starts at $3,000 a month. I looked between them, these two adults who had benefited from my generosity for years. The down payment I'd given them for this very house. The childcare I'd provided when Emma was a baby so Jennifer could return to work. The checks I'd written for dance lessons and summer camps. I'll need to look at my budget, I said carefully. My pension only goes so far. Of course, Derek said, clearly relieved I wasn't arguing. Take your time. Maybe by next month? And Mom, Jennifer added, I know the basement isn't ideal, but we're working on finding you something better. It's just temporary. I understand, I said, rising from the table. If you'll excuse me, I think I'll turn in early tonight. As I descended the basement stairs, I heard Derek murmur to Jennifer, See? That wasn't so bad. She understands this. Is a two-way street. What they couldn't see was the smile that crept across my face in the darkness of the basement. A two-way street indeed. Little did they know which direction traffic would soon be flowing. The next morning, I called my financial advisor, the one who had been managing Harold's bequest. "Barbara," James greeted me warmly. "What can I do for you today?" "I'd like to liquidate some assets," I said. "I'm purchasing another property on Evergreen Street, the Madison house at the corner." "That's your third purchase in that neighborhood?" James noted. "May I ask what your strategy is here?" "Let's call it a long-term investment in my peace of mind," I replied. "The housing market in Oak Ridge is strong, and I expect these properties to appreciate significantly in the next few years." "I don't doubt that," James said. "I'm just curious about the concentration of your investments in one specific neighborhood." "Trust me, James. I know exactly what I'm doing." After hanging up, I called Brian to finalize the offer on the Madison property, my third purchase on Evergreen Street. Brian had secured a deal below asking price since the owners were divorcing, and eager to sell quickly. "It's another great property, Barbara," Brian assured me. "Corner lot, larger than the others, with that beautiful stone exterior. Are you planning to renovate this one too?" "Eventually," I said, "but the Reynolds house is my priority for now. That's where I'll be living." "And the others? Rentals?" "We'll see," I said, keeping my options open. "For now, let's just focus on closing the Madison deal as quickly as possible." That evening, as I sat on my cot listening to the family move about upstairs, excluded from their dinner as I had been increasingly often, "Sorry, Mom, we didn't make enough for everyone." I opened my laptop and began researching the other properties on Evergreen Street. There were 12 houses total on the street. I already owned 2 and was in the process of buying a third. 9 to go. The thought made me laugh softly to myself. Was I really considering buying an entire street? It seemed absurd, excessive, and yet the idea took root in my mind, growing stronger by the day. It wasn't about the money anymore, or even the investments. It was about reclaiming something I'd lost. My dignity, my autonomy, my right to be treated with respect. The next day, I ventured out early, walking the length of Evergreen Street and noting each property. The Peterson house, a Tudor style with beautiful landscaping. The Mitchell place, a sprawling ranch with a circular driveway. The Hendersons, the Garcias, the Wongs, families who had lived here for years, built lives here, created a community. I wasn't naive enough to think I could buy them all, or that they would all be for sale. But I could watch, wait, be ready when opportunities arose. And in the meantime, I would continue my renovations on the Reynolds place, preparing for the day I would finally tell Jennifer exactly who owned the house across the street from hers. That afternoon, I received a call from Sarah Mitchell, my lawyer. "Barbara, I've reviewed the closing documents for the Madison property. Everything looks in order. We're scheduled to close next Tuesday." "Excellent," I said. "And the Reynolds house? How are we proceeding with transferring the utilities and property tax arrangements?" "All in progress," Sarah assured me. "You should be able to officially move in within the next 3 to 4 weeks, once all the paperwork clears. Though I understand you already have access for renovations." "Yes, they're moving along nicely. I may need your help with one more thing, Sarah. I'm considering acquiring additional properties in the neighborhood as they become available. I'd like to set up a holding company to manage these investments, something that wouldn't immediately connect back to me." There was a pause on the line. "Barbara, may I speak frankly?" "Of course." "What exactly are you planning here? This pattern of purchases, all in your daughter's neighborhood, all being kept secret from her." "It's unusual, to say the least." I sighed. "Let's just say I'm teaching my daughter a lesson about gratitude and respect, one she desperately needs to learn. I see, Sarah said, though her tone suggested she didn't entirely. Well, I can certainly help you set up an LLC to manage these properties. It would provide some anonymity and tax advantages as well. Perfect, I said. Let's proceed with that. After hanging up, I sat for a long moment, considering Sarah's unspoken concerns. Was I going too far? Was this elaborate plan born of hurt and resentment, rather than any real desire for justice? Perhaps. But every time I climbed those basement stairs to use the bathroom, every time I heard Jennifer and Derek discussing me as if I were a problem to solve rather than a person to respect, my resolve strengthened. That evening, Jennifer cornered me as I was coming up from the basement to get a glass of water. "Mom," she said, her voice hushed though the children were already in bed. "Where have you been going every day? Derek noticed you're gone for hours at a time." I raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware I needed to report my whereabouts. Jennifer had the grace to look embarrassed. "You don't. It's just, we worry. At your age, being out alone so much." "At my age?" I repeated. "Jennifer, I'm 60, not 90. I worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital until 3 weeks ago. I think I can manage a walk around town without a chaperone." "Of course, I didn't mean—" She flustered, then regrouped. "It's just that Derek and I need to know when people are coming and going from the house, for security reasons." "I see," I said, keeping my face neutral. "Well, I've been visiting Diane mostly, and running errands, looking into those retirement communities you're so eager to send me to." Jennifer brightened. "Oh, have you found one you like? There's an open house at Golden Meadows next weekend. We could go together if you want." The eagerness in her voice to be rid of me was unmistakable. "I'll think about it," I said, though I'm not sure my budget will stretch to cover their monthly fees. "Well, selling your house should help with that," Jennifer pointed out. "Have you listed it yet? Derek's cousin Ryan is still willing to help you with that." "I'm considering my options," I said vaguely. In truth, I had no intention of selling my old house yet. It was currently being rented to a lovely young family, at a reasonable rate, providing me with additional monthly income. "Don't wait too long," Jennifer advised. "The spring market is the best time to sell. And honestly, Mom, the sooner you sort out a permanent living situation, the better. The basement was only ever meant to be temporary, remember?" As if I could forget. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "We wouldn't want me imposing on your hospitality any longer than necessary." Jennifer had the decency to wince at that. "It's not that we don't want you here, Mom. It's just that everyone needs their own space, you included." I thought of the beautiful house across the street, with its ongoing renovations that would make it the showpiece of the neighborhood. "I couldn't agree more, Jennifer. Everyone deserves their own space, a place where they're respected and valued." She nodded, clearly relieved I was being so reasonable. "Exactly. I'm glad you understand." "I understand perfectly," I assured her, turning to head back to the basement, my temporary prison, more clearly with each passing day. 2 days later, I was helping Tyler with a Lego creation in the living room when Derek came home early from work, his face drawn with concern. "Have you seen the Reynolds place?" he asked Jennifer, not bothering to greet me or his son. "There's a full construction crew over there. They've torn the whole kitchen out, and there are design plans for what looks like a major renovation." Jennifer frowned. "The Reynolds moved? When did that happen? They didn't even put a sign in the yard." "Apparently they sold to some developer or flipper," Derek said, peering out the front window. "I asked one of the workers, but he was pretty tight-lipped. Just said the new owner has plans to make it the nicest house on the block." I kept my eyes on Tyler's Lego spaceship, fighting to keep my expression neutral. "Great," Jennifer groaned. "Just what we need. Months of construction noise and dust. And who knows what kind of people will move in when it's done. Probably some young tech couple with loud parties and no regard for the neighborhood character." "Or worse," Derek added. They could turn it into a rental. Property values will tank if Evergreen starts filling up with renters instead of owners. I couldn't help myself. What's wrong with renters? I was a renter for years before I could afford to buy a house. Derek gave me a dismissive glance. It's different in a neighborhood like this. Renters don't have the same investment in the community. They don't maintain properties to the same standards. I thought of the meticulous care I'd taken with every rental I'd ever lived in. The pride I'd taken in making even temporary spaces feel like home. But I held my tongue. Let them worry. Let them wonder. The time for explanations would come soon enough. That night, as I lay on my cot listening to the sounds of the house settling, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the latest photos Carlos had sent me of the renovation progress. The kitchen walls had come down, opening the space to the dining area as I'd requested. The master bathroom was being gutted, preparatory to installing the luxury soaking tub and dual vanities I'd selected. In 3 more weeks, if the renovations stayed on schedule, I would be ready to move into my new home, to walk across the street and leave this basement behind forever, to stand in my bay window and wave to Jennifer as she left for work each morning. The daughter who had relegated her mother to the basement now confronted with the reality of who that mother truly was. The anticipation kept me warm in the chilly basement air. That, and the knowledge that this was just the beginning. The Madison house would close next week. And yesterday, Brian had called with news that the Hendersons might be interested in selling. They were expecting their 3rd child and eyeing a larger property across town. Evergreen Street was slowly, house by house, becoming mine. And neither Jennifer nor Derek had the slightest idea what was happening right under their noses. Or rather, right across the street from them. I closed my eyes, smiling in the darkness. Let them worry about noise and dust and property values. Let them fret about renters and neighborhood character. Soon enough, they would have much bigger concerns. Soon enough, they would understand exactly what it meant to underestimate Barbara Wilson, the mother they had banished to the basement. The morning my renovation team finished the kitchen in the Reynolds house was the same morning Jennifer decided to have the talk with me again. I was sitting at their kitchen table, not in Derek's sacred spot, I'd learned that lesson, nursing a cup of coffee and scrolling through an update from Carlos showing the gleaming granite countertops and custom cabinetry that had just been installed. I quickly tucked my phone away as Jennifer entered, still in her silk pajamas, hair perfectly tousled even at 7 a.m. "Mom," she said, pouring herself coffee before joining me at the table. "Derek and I have been talking. It's been a month now, and we really need to start making some more permanent arrangements." I nodded, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "I understand. The basement is hardly ideal." "Exactly," Jennifer said, relief evident in her voice. "I've scheduled a tour at Golden Meadows for this Saturday. It's really lovely, Mom. They have a community garden, weekly movie nights, even a small fitness center." "How thoughtful of you," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "And the cost?" Jennifer hesitated. "Well, it's not inexpensive. The base rate is $3,200 a month for a studio apartment. But with the sale of your house, you should be able to manage it for quite some time." "I see," I said. "And when exactly did I agree to sell my house?" Jennifer blinked, thrown off by my directness. "Well, you can't keep it empty indefinitely, Mom. It's just sitting there, costing you money in taxes and maintenance. Ryan says, the market is perfect right now for a quick sale." Ryan being Derek's cousin, the realtor who would earn a nice commission on that sale? A flicker of irritation crossed Jennifer's face. "Ryan is just trying to help. We're all trying to help. You, Mom. I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this." I set my cup down carefully. "Is asking to make my own decisions about my own property being difficult?" "Of course not, but..." "Then perhaps you could explain why you feel entitled to decide when and if I sell my home? Or where I should live? Or how I should spend what little money I have?" Jennifer's face flushed. That's not fair. We've opened our home to you. We've made space. In the basement, I finished for her. Without a bathroom. Where I'm now expected to pay $300 monthly for the privilege of sleeping on a cot between your Christmas decorations and Derek's old golf clubs. Mom! Jennifer's voice rose in indignation. We're doing the best we can. Do you have any idea how tight things are for us? The mortgage, the kids' activities, saving for college. We're stretched thin already. The $300 barely covers what you cost us in utilities and food. I studied my daughter's face, the designer highlights in her hair, the subtle glow of expensive skincare products, the diamond studs in her ears that Derek had given her for their anniversary. Stretched thin was clearly a relative term. You're right, I said finally. $300 is more than fair for the accommodations I've been provided. I'll have a check for you by the end of the week, and I'll think about the Golden Meadows tour. Jennifer relaxed visibly, assuming she'd won. Great. I really think you'll like it there, Mom. It's full of people your age, with similar interests. You'll finally have the social life you've been missing. The condescension in her voice made my teeth clench, but I maintained my calm expression. How perceptive of you to know exactly what I've been missing. If Jennifer caught the sarcasm, she didn't show it. She simply patted my hand in that patronizing way she'd developed and rose from the table. I need to get ready for work. Oh, and Mom? The kids have activities after school today, so they won't be home until dinner. Could you defrost the chicken from the freezer? I was thinking of making that lemon garlic recipe. Of course, I said, though we both knew she meant for me to cook the dinner, not just defrost the chicken. After Jennifer left for work, I slipped out of the house and walked across the street to my soon-to-be home. Carlos greeted me at the door, pride evident in his face. Mrs. Wilson, wait until you see the kitchen. It's spectacular. He wasn't exaggerating. The space had been transformed, from a dated, closed-off galley kitchen to an open, airy chef's dream. The white cabinets gleamed against the soft gray walls. The granite countertops sparkled in the morning light streaming through the now larger windows, and the center island with its waterfall edge made a stunning focal point. It's perfect, I breathed, running my hands over the cool stone. Absolutely perfect. The appliances will be delivered tomorrow, Carlos informed me, and the custom backsplash tile arrives next week. We're still on schedule for the master bathroom completion by Friday, and then it's just finishing touches on the flooring and paint. How soon could I move in? I asked. If I wanted to bring in furniture before everything is completely finished? Carlos considered this. The bedrooms are done except for final paint touch-ups. You could certainly start bringing in bedroom furniture by the weekend. The living areas would be ready by early next week. We'd just need to work around you for the final details. Make it happen, I said decisively. I want to move in as soon as possible. Is there a problem with your current living situation? Carlos asked cautiously. I smiled thinly. Let's just say I've outstayed my welcome in a basement that was never particularly welcoming to begin with. That afternoon, I met with Sarah Mitchell at her law office downtown. The tasteful brass plaque beside her door read, Mitchell and Associates, Family Law and Estate Planning. Sarah had been handling my legal affairs since Harold's bequest, and I trusted her completely. Barbara, she greeted me warmly, rising from behind her desk. I have good news. The Madison property closed this morning. That's 3 houses on. Evergreen Street now in your portfolio. Excellent, I said, settling into the comfortable chair across from her. And the LLC set up? Evergreen Holdings LLC is officially registered, Sarah confirmed, sliding a folder across her desk. All 3 properties have been transferred into the company's ownership. As the sole owner of the LLC, you maintain complete control, but your name is no longer directly tied to the properties in public records. I nodded, satisfied. Perfect. What about the Henderson place? Any movement there? They're definitely interested in selling, Sarah said, consulting her notes. But they're asking above market value, thinking they can capitalize on the recent uptick in the neighborhood. I've had our real estate consultant prepare a fair counteroffer. Submit it, I said without hesitation. Let's make it a cash offer, with a quick closing period. That usually gets their attention. Sarah studied me for a moment, her professional demeanor softening slightly. Barbara, I've helped many clients with property investments over the years, but I've never seen anyone so focused on acquiring real estate in one specific neighborhood. Are you certain this is about investment diversification and not something more personal? I met her gaze steadily. It can be both, can it? Evergreen Street is in an excellent school district with historically strong property values. The homes are well built, the lots are generous, and the location is convenient to downtown. From a purely investment standpoint, it makes perfect sense. And the personal angle? I sighed, deciding Sarah deserved some honesty after all her help. My daughter lives on Evergreen Street. The same daughter who relegated me to her basement and now wants to ship me off to a retirement community so she doesn't have to look at me anymore. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. I see. And these property purchases are… what exactly? Leverage? Revenge? I prefer to think of it as a lesson in consequences, I said carefully. Jennifer has spent years taking my support for granted, assuming I would always be there with an open checkbook and no expectations of respect or consideration in return. She's about to learn that assumptions can be very costly. And when do you plan to reveal your property empire to her? I smiled at Sarah's choice of words. Soon. I'll be moving into the Reynolds house across the street within the next 2 weeks. That will be revelation enough to start with. Sarah nodded slowly. Well, it's certainly not my place to question your motivations. Your finances are in excellent order, and these investments are sound. I just hope whatever closure you're seeking brings you peace, not more conflict. Thank you for your concern, I said sincerely. But I've spent 60 years putting others' needs before my own. It's time I remembered my own worth. As I left Sarah's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Brian Cooper. Henderson counteroffer accepted. They want 45-day closing, but are willing to grant early access for planning. Congratulations on property number 4. I smiled, tucking my phone away. 4 down, 8 to go. Though in truth, I wasn't sure I would be able to acquire all 12 properties on Evergreen Street. Some homeowners might never want to sell, and I wasn't in the business of forcing anyone out. Still, even owning a third of the street was more than enough to make my point. That evening, I returned to Jennifer's house to find a note on the kitchen counter. Mom, had to take kids to emergency soccer practice. Chicken still in freezer. Leftovers in fridge if you're hungry. J. No dinner prepared, no chicken defrosted, despite her specific request that morning, and clearly no thought given to whether I might have made plans based on her earlier instructions. Just another small reminder of my place in the hierarchy of this household. I heated up some leftover pasta for myself and retreated to the basement, where I spent the evening researching furniture options for my new home. The master bedroom would need everything: a new bed, nightstands, dresser. I settled on a luxurious king-size bed with a tufted headboard in soft gray velvet, paired with sleek modern nightstands and a matching dresser. For the guest rooms, I chose more traditional pieces that would appeal to a variety of tastes. The following morning, I rose early and slipped out before anyone else was awake. I had an appointment with Diane at the Morning Brew to finalize some plans. "You're really going through with this?" Diane asked, eyes wide as I showed her photos of the renovated kitchen. "Moving in across the street from Jennifer?" "Absolutely," I confirmed. "But I need a favor. The furniture deliveries start this weekend, and I'd rather Jennifer not see them arriving. Could you help me coordinate with the delivery companies to come early, before Jennifer and Derek are usually up on weekends?" Diane grinned, a mischievous spark in her eyes. "Oh, I am all in on this scheme," Operation Basement Liberation is a go. I was thinking of calling it Operation Reality Check, but yours has a nice ring to it too, I laughed. When are you going to tell her? Diane asked. About the house, I mean. I'm thinking of hosting a housewarming party, I said, stirring my coffee thoughtfully. Inviting the whole neighborhood, including Jennifer and Derek. Let them discover the truth alongside everyone else. Deliciously devious, Diane approved. Count me in for that too. I want a front row seat when Jennifer realizes her basement dwelling. Mother is actually the neighborhood property baroness. For the next week, I maintained my usual routine at Jennifer's house, making myself scarce during the day, preparing dinners that often went unacknowledged, and retreating to the basement each night. But my daylight hours were now filled with purpose, supervising the final touches on my new home, coordinating furniture deliveries, and meeting with landscapers to refresh the front garden. The following Saturday, while Jennifer and Derek took the children to Emma's dance recital, Diane helped me move my personal belongings, what few I had kept with me in the basement, across the street to the Reynolds house. My new bed had been delivered and set up the day before, along with the other bedroom furniture. The living room sofa and chairs were scheduled for Monday, but I had enough now to make the house comfortably habitable. This place is stunning, Diane marveled as we made up the bed with the new high thread count sheets I'd purchased. That kitchen is a chef's dream, and this master suite, Barbara, it's something out of a magazine. That was the idea, I said, smoothing the duvet. I wanted a fresh start, a place that reflects who I am now. Not the service worker, not the self-sacrificing mother, just Barbara. Well, Barbara has excellent taste, Diane declared, fluffing the pillows. And I'm guessing Jennifer has no idea you're making your great escape today? None whatsoever, I confirmed. I've left a note on my cot explaining that I've found alternative accommodations and thanking them for their hospitality. I've also left a check for $300, the amount they requested for this month's basement rental. Ice cold, Diane said with admiration. But when will you tell them exactly where you've moved to? I smiled, gazing out the master bedroom window at Jennifer's house across the street. Oh, I think they'll figure it out soon enough. That evening, I slept in my own king-size bed for the first time in months. The luxury of a private bathroom, the comfort of quality mattress and linens, the simple dignity of a space that was mine, wholly and completely mine, brought me a peace I hadn't felt since before Jennifer's basement proposal. In the morning, I woke early and made coffee in my gleaming new kitchen, carrying the steaming mug to the front window where I could watch Jennifer's house. Around 8:30, I saw Derek step outside to retrieve the Sunday paper. He glanced up, noticing movement in the window of what had been the empty Reynolds house. Our eyes met across the street. Even from this distance, I could see the confusion on his face as he recognized me. I lifted my coffee mug in a small salute, then turned away from the window, smiling to myself. The opening salvo had been fired. Less than 15 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I took my time answering it, straightening my new silk lounging, pajamas and checking my reflection in the hallway mirror. When I opened the door, Derek stood on my porch, still in his weekend sweatpants and t-shirt, confusion and irritation warring on his face. "Barbara?" he said, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "What are you doing here? We found your note, but this is where you moved?" "Good morning, Derek," I said pleasantly. "Would you like to come in for coffee? The new machine was just delivered yesterday, and it makes an excellent espresso." He stepped inside, his eyes widening as he took in the renovated space, the open floor plan, the high-end finishes, the obvious expense that had gone into every detail. "How?" he began, then stopped, shaking his head. "I don't understand. Are you working for the new owners? Some kind of live-in arrangement?" I laughed softly. "No, Derek, I am the new owner. Would you like a tour?" His mouth opened and closed, reminding me of a fish suddenly finding itself on dry land. You bought this house? How? When? About a month ago, I said casually, leading him into the kitchen. The renovations are nearly complete, as you can see. Just a few finishing touches left. But this is $1 million property, Derek sputtered. The renovations alone must have cost hundreds of thousands. $350,000, to be precise, I confirmed, enjoying his shock. I wanted it done right. Derek's face had turned an interesting shade of red. Barbara, I don't understand. You've been living in our basement because you couldn't afford other accommodations. You've been working as a nurse your entire life. Where did you get this kind of money? I poured him a cup of coffee from my new machine, taking my time before answering. My financial situation is not quite what you and Jennifer assumed it to be. I've had resources for some time now. Resources, he repeated flatly. And you didn't think to mention these resources when we were discussing your living arrangements, when we were worried about how you would afford retirement. You never asked, I said simply. You assumed I was destitute and dependent. You decided where I should live and how much I should pay for the privilege of a basement cot. At no point did either of you actually inquire about my finances, my preferences, or my plans. Derek stared at me, coffee forgotten in his hand. Does Jennifer know about this? Not yet, I said. But I imagine she will soon since you're about to tell her. As if on cue, the front door burst open and Jennifer rushed in, still in her pajamas, her face a storm of confusion and anger. Mom, what is going on? Derek said you've bought the Reynolds house? How is that possible? Good morning, Jennifer, I said calmly. Yes, I've purchased this property. The renovations are nearly complete, as you can see. I'll be living here from now on. Jennifer's gaze darted around the space, taking in the luxury and expense evident in every detail. This isn't possible, she said flatly. You don't have this kind of money. You worked as a nurse. You lived paycheck to paycheck. That's what you assumed, I corrected her. But there's quite a bit about me you don't know, Jennifer, including the fact that I've had a substantial nest egg for several years now. From what? She demanded. Did you win the lottery? Get a settlement I don't know about? A bequest, I said. From a former patient who valued the care I provided. Harold Thompson left me a significant sum in his will 5 years ago. Jennifer's face went through a series of rapid transformations. Shock, disbelief, calculation, and finally, something that looked suspiciously like resentment. 5 years? You've had this money for 5 years and never said anything? Even when we were struggling with the mortgage, with Emma's braces, with all our expenses? I regarded my daughter steadily. I helped you with the down payment on your house. I've contributed to the children's activities and expenses consistently over the years. But yes, I kept the full extent of my financial situation private. Why? Jennifer's voice rose in frustration. Why would you hide something like that from your own daughter? Because I wanted to be valued for who I am, not what I have, I said quietly. I wanted to know that the consideration and respect I received was genuine, not contingent on my bank balance. That's not fair, Jennifer protested. We've always respected you. Have you? I asked, my voice still calm. You relegated me to a basement without a bathroom. You expected me to pay rent for the privilege. You discussed shipping me off to a retirement community as if I were a package to be rerouted. At what point in that process did respect come into play? Jennifer flushed, her eyes darting away from mine. We were doing the best we could with limited space and resources. And yet, here I am, with considerably more space and resources than you imagined. Funny how perceptions change, isn't it? Derek, who had been silently observing our exchange, finally spoke up. How much exactly are we talking about here, Barbara? The bequest? I turned to him, one eyebrow raised. That's an awfully personal question, Derek. Under the circumstances, I think it's relevant, he persisted. Very well, I conceded. Harold left me approximately $2.5 million. With wise investments over the past 5 years, that sum has grown considerably. Jennifer gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Millions? You've had millions all this time and let us think you were struggling? Let us worry about your retirement? That's dishonest, I suggested. Manipulative, perhaps. Forcing someone to reveal their financial situation when they prefer privacy? Making assumptions about their worth based on their occupation? Yes, I agree. Those behaviors are problematic. That's not what I meant, Jennifer said, her voice tight. I meant it's hurtful that you didn't trust us enough to share something so important. Trust is earned, I said simply. And it goes both ways. You didn't trust that I could make my own decisions about where and how to live. Why should I have trusted you with knowledge of my resources? A heavy silence fell between us. Finally, Derek cleared his throat. Well, the house is certainly beautiful. Congratulations on your purchase, Barbara. His attempt at diplomacy rang hollow, especially given the calculating look that hadn't left his eyes since I'd mentioned the amount of Harold's bequest. Thank you, I said politely. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some unpacking to do. I'm expecting more furniture deliveries this afternoon. We'll leave you to it then, Derek said, taking Jennifer's arm. Come on, Jen. Let's give your mother some space. Wait, Jennifer said, pulling away from him. Mom, I don't understand. If you had all this money, why did you agree to stay in our basement in the first place? Why didn't you just buy a place immediately? I regarded my daughter thoughtfully. Because I wanted to see how you would treat me when you thought I had nothing. And you showed me very clearly. Jennifer recoiled as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. We were trying to help. Were you? I asked softly. Or were you trying to position me where I would be most useful to you, at the least inconvenience? The basement dweller who could provide childcare and cook dinner, pay rent for the privilege, and eventually be shipped off to a retirement community when even that arrangement became too burdensome. Tears welled in Jennifer's eyes. You're twisting everything. We love you. We wanted you close to us, to the children. Love without respect isn't love at all, I said, my voice gentle but firm. It's ownership, and I'm no longer available to be owned, Jennifer. So this is what then? She gestured around the luxurious space. Some kind of punishment? Moving right across the street to throw your wealth in our faces? Not at all, I said. I chose this location because, despite everything, I still want to be near my grandchildren. Emma and Tyler are welcome here anytime. This is their grandmother's house, and it will always be open to them. Jennifer wiped at her tears angrily. And what about us? Are we welcome too, or have you written us off entirely? I considered her question carefully. That depends on whether you're interested in building a relationship based on mutual respect, or whether you're simply recalculating my value now that you know my net worth. Derek put his arm around Jennifer's shoulders. I think we all need some time to process this. It's a lot to take in. Of course, I agreed. Take all the time you need. I'll be right here, across the street, living my life on my own terms. For the first time in decades. After they left, I stood at my front window watching them cross back to their house. Derek had his arm around Jennifer, who was visibly upset. I felt a momentary pang of regret for the hurt my revelations had caused, but I quickly pushed it aside. Sometimes pain was necessary for growth, and Jennifer had some significant growing to do if our relationship was ever to be repaired. That afternoon, as promised, the rest of my furniture was delivered. The living room came together beautifully, with the blue velvet sofa and cream accent chairs I'd selected, arranged around the marble coffee table that was a splurge even by my new standards. The dining room was outfitted with a table large enough to seat 10, perfect for the family gatherings I still hoped might happen one day, if Jennifer and Derek could move past their shock and resentment. As the delivery crew was leaving, I noticed Emma and Tyler standing at the end of my driveway, curiosity evident in their small faces. I waved them over. "Grandma?" Emma called uncertainly. "Is this your house now?" "It is," I confirmed, opening the door wider. "Would you two like to come in and see it?" They glanced back at their own house, clearly checking whether they had permission. Seeing no objection from their parents, they scampered up the driveway. "Wow," Tyler breathed as they entered the foyer. "It's so big." "And pretty," Emma added, running her hand along the new banister. "Can we see our rooms?" "Your rooms?" I repeated, surprised. "Yeah, if we stay over sometimes," Emma explained. "Like for sleepovers with you." My heart swelled. "Of course you can. I've prepared rooms for both of you." I'd set up the 2 additional bedrooms with my grandchildren in mind, one with a space theme for Tyler and one with a reading nook for Emma, who loved books. I gave them the grand tour, ending in the kitchen where I'd stocked the freezer with their favorite ice cream. As they sat at the island enjoying their treats, I found myself thinking that perhaps, just perhaps, this new chapter might bring healing, as well as justice. "Does Mom know you're rich now?" Emma asked suddenly, displaying the directness only a 10-year-old can manage. I smiled at her honesty. "I've always had resources, Emma. Your mom just didn't know about them until today." "Is that why you moved out of our basement?" Tyler asked, chocolate ice cream smeared around his mouth. "Because it was yucky down there?" "The basement wasn't ideal," I acknowledged, handing him a napkin. "But mainly I moved because grandmas need their own space, just like you kids do." "Mom said you were mad at her," Emma said carefully. "Are you?" I considered how to answer this truthfully while still being appropriate. "Your mom and I have some things to work through," I said finally. "Sometimes adults disagree about how they've treated each other, but that has nothing to do with how much I love you too." "Will you still come over for dinner and stuff?" Tyler asked, his lower lip trembling slightly. "Of course I will, if I'm invited," I assured him. "And you can come here anytime you want. In fact, I was thinking of having a housewarming party next weekend and inviting the whole neighborhood. Would you two like to help me plan it?" Their faces lit up, and they spent the next half hour suggesting increasingly outlandish party ideas, from a chocolate fountain, bigger than our house, to a petting zoo in the backyard. I found myself laughing more than I had in months, the tension of the morning's confrontation melting away in the face of their innocent enthusiasm. Word of my new residence spread through Evergreen Street, like wildfire. By Monday morning, I'd received 3 bouquets of flowers from neighbors welcoming me to the community, along with several not-so-subtle requests to tour my renovated home. The Henderson family, whose house I was in the process of purchasing, stopped by with a homemade apple pie and barely concealed curiosity about the mysterious buyer of their home who had made such a generous offer. "We had no idea you were the one buying our place," Alice Henderson said, bouncing her toddler on her hip while her husband chased their kindergartner around my front yard. When our agent mentioned Evergreen Holdings LLC, we assumed it was some faceless investment company. I smiled, accepting the pie. "I prefer to keep my investments private, but since we're going to be neighbors, at least temporarily, I thought I should introduce myself properly." "Temporarily?" Alice raised an eyebrow. "Are you planning to flip our house too? The renovations you've done here are spectacular." "Thank you," I said. "And no, not flipping exactly. I'm considering a few options. Your home has excellent bones and a wonderful location." "Unlike our noisy neighbors," Alice laughed, gesturing toward Jennifer's house. "Their kids are adorable, but those dinner parties they throw every other weekend drive us crazy. Thank goodness. We're moving to a place with better sound insulation." I filed away this information about Jennifer and Derek's apparently frequent entertaining, something they'd never once invited me to participate in during my basement tenure. "I'm sure I'll manage just fine," I assured Alice. "I've got some Experience dealing with difficult neighbors. After the Hendersons left, I spent the afternoon arranging my new living room and hanging artwork I'd purchased specifically for this space. Around 4 o'clock, my doorbell rang again. This time, it was Melissa Grant, Jennifer's closest friend on the street. "Barbara?" she said, her surprise evident despite surely having heard the news already. "I almost didn't believe it when Jennifer told me you'd bought the Reynolds place. What an amazing renovation." "Thank you, Melissa," I said, stepping aside to let her in. "Would you like a tour?" "I'd love one," she said, her eyes already darting around the foyer, taking in every detail. "Jennifer mentioned you'd come into some money recently. The place looks incredible." I noted her careful phrasing. Come into some money recently. Clearly, Jennifer hadn't shared the full truth about my financial situation with her friend. Interesting. I showed Melissa through the house, enjoying her poorly, concealed astonishment at the high-end finishes and custom details. As we concluded the tour in the kitchen, she perched on one of the island stools, openly staring at the Sub-Zero refrigerator and Wolf range. "This is just... wow," she said. "Jennifer must be thrilled to have you so close by now. And in such a gorgeous home." "Jennifer is adjusting to the new arrangement," I said diplomatically. Melissa's perfectly maintained eyebrows rose slightly. "Yes, well, it must have been quite a shock. She mentioned you were staying with them temporarily while figuring out retirement plans. This is certainly a change from what she described." "Life is full of surprises," I said mildly. "Coffee?" Melissa accepted, and as I prepared 2 cups using my new espresso machine, she continued probing. "Jennifer mentioned something about a former patient leaving you money? That must have been quite a windfall to afford all this." "Harold was very generous," I acknowledged, "and I've been fortunate with my investments since then." "Well, it certainly shows," Melissa said, gesturing around the kitchen. "Though I have to ask, isn't it a bit awkward living directly across from Jennifer and Derek after staying in their basement? There must have been some reason you were there instead of in your own place." The subtle fishing for gossip was so transparent. I almost laughed. "Not awkward at all," I said smoothly. "I wanted to spend time with my family while considering my options. Once I decided on this property, it made sense to wait until the renovations were complete before moving in." "Of course," Melissa nodded, though her expression suggested she didn't believe me for a moment. "It's just such a coincidence that of all the houses in Oak Ridge, you chose the one right across from Jennifer." "Is it?" I asked innocently. "I've always believed family should stay close." Melissa took a sip of her coffee, clearly regrouping. "Speaking of family, Jennifer mentioned you're planning a housewarming party. That sounds lovely." "Indeed," I confirmed. "This Saturday afternoon. An open house for the neighborhood, nothing too formal. I do hope you'll come." "I wouldn't miss it," Melissa assured me, setting down her cup. "Well, I should get going. Thanks for the tour and the coffee, Barbara. Your home is truly spectacular." After she left, I had no doubt that my conversation with Melissa would be faithfully reported back to Jennifer within the hour. Good. Let the grapevine do its work. By Saturday, every resident of Evergreen Street would be buzzing with curiosity about the former nurse who had suddenly revealed herself to be wealthy enough to purchase and renovate one of the street's most desirable properties. But what none of them knew yet, not even Jennifer, was that the Reynolds house was just the beginning. The following day, I received a call from Sarah Mitchell. "Barbara, I have news about the Henderson property. The inspection is complete, and everything looks good. We're on track for closing in 30 days as planned." "Excellent," I said. "And the Madison place? Has the paperwork been finalized?" "Yes, all done," Sarah confirmed. "That property is officially yours, or rather, Evergreen Holdings LLC's. Which brings me to my next question. What are your plans for these properties? The Reynolds house is clearly your residence, but the others? Are you planning to rent them?" Resell after renovations? I'm keeping my options open, I said. For now, let's focus on closing the Henderson deal. Have you heard anything about the Garcias? Brian mentioned they might be considering a move to Arizona. Nothing concrete. Yet, Sarah said. But I'll keep my ear to the ground. Barbara, at the risk of overstepping, may I ask how many properties on Evergreen Street you're planning to acquire? As many as become available, I said simply. Within reason, of course. There was a pause on the line. I see. Well, as your attorney, I should remind you that concentrated investments carry higher risk. Diversification is generally advisable. Noted, I said. But some investments aren't solely about financial returns. After hanging up, I spent some time planning Saturday's housewarming party. I wanted it to be perfect, elegant without being ostentatious, welcoming to the entire neighborhood, but with a special focus on making Emma and Tyler feel at home in their grandmother's new house. I ordered catering from Riverside Grill, the upscale restaurant where Jennifer and Derek had taken me to announce my basement banishment, and arranged for a small jazz trio to provide background music in the garden. On Wednesday evening, Jennifer finally came to visit on her own. She knocked tentatively, as if unsure of her welcome, and when I opened the door, I could see she'd been crying. "Mom," she said, her voice small. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside to let her in. "Of course. Would you like some tea?" She nodded, following me to the kitchen where I put the kettle on. She sat at the island, her fingers tracing patterns on the granite countertop. "This is really beautiful," she said finally. "You've done an amazing job with the house." "Thank you," I said, taking 2 mugs from the cabinet. The designers understood exactly what I wanted. "Mom," Jennifer began, then stopped, taking a deep breath. "I owe you an apology. The basement, it wasn't right. We shouldn't have put you there, especially not when we had the guest room upstairs." "No," I agreed calmly. "You shouldn't have. We got so used to Derek's mother using it when she visits, and then Emma wanted her own space for her crafts, and it just seemed like the basement was the only option left. But that's no excuse. It was wrong, and I'm sorry." I placed a mug of tea in front of her, studying my daughter's face. The apology seemed genuine, but I couldn't help wondering what had prompted it. Jennifer's pride rarely allowed her to admit fault so directly. "Has Melissa been to see you?" I asked, taking a seat across from her. Jennifer looked startled. "How did you know?" "Just a guess," I said. "She visited me yesterday. Seemed quite interested in the details of my financial situation." Jennifer had the grace to look embarrassed. "She called me right after. Went on and on about how amazing your house is, how expensive everything looks. I think she was trying to make me feel bad, honestly." "And did she succeed?" Jennifer's eyes filled with tears again. "Yes. But not for the reasons she thought. It wasn't about the money or the house. It was realizing how badly we'd treated you, and how you'd just taken it. Until you didn't anymore." I sipped my tea, letting the silence stretch between us. Finally, I said, "Do you know why I didn't tell you about Harold's bequest when it happened?" Jennifer shook her head. "Because I didn't want it to change anything between us. I was still your mother, still a nurse, still the same person. The money was security for my retirement, nothing more. I didn't want you to see me differently." "But I wouldn't have—" "You would have," I interrupted gently. "You do now. I can see it in the way you're looking at me, the way you're sitting in my kitchen apologizing when you've spent weeks treating me like an unwelcome houseguest." Jennifer flinched. "That's not fair. I'm apologizing because I realized I was wrong, not because you're rich now." "Are you sure about that?" I asked. "Would you have had this realization if I'd moved into a modest apartment instead of the house across the street? If Melissa hadn't made you feel embarrassed about how you treated me?" "I don't know," Jennifer admitted after a pause. "Maybe not right away, but eventually I think I would have. You're my mother. I do love you, despite how it might have seemed lately. I softened slightly. I know you do, in your way. But love without respect isn't enough, Jennifer. You relegated me to your basement not because there was genuinely no other option, but because you didn't see me as deserving better. That's what hurt the most. I see that now, Jennifer said, wiping away a tear. And I really am sorry. I want to make it right somehow. It's not about making it right with a grand gesture, I told her. It's about changing how you see me, and others. It's about recognizing that worth isn't measured by bank accounts or job titles. Jennifer nodded, looking down at her tea. The kids miss you. They keep asking when they can come visit your new house again. They're welcome anytime, I said, immediately. In fact, I was hoping they might help me finish setting up for the housewarming party this weekend. Emma has quite an eye for decorating, and Tyler's enthusiasm is infectious. They'd love that, Jennifer said, managing a small smile. And are Derek and I still invited to this party? Of course, I said. You're my family, Jennifer. That hasn't changed, even if our living arrangements have. As she was leaving, Jennifer paused at the door. Mom, can I ask you something? The renovations, the furniture, everything? How much did all this cost? I raised an eyebrow. That's a rather personal question, isn't it? She flushed. I'm not asking to be nosy. I'm trying to understand the scope of your resources. We were so worried about your retirement, about you ending up dependent and struggling. It's hard to reconcile that with... She gestured around the foyer. Harold left me $2.5 million, I said simply. I've invested wisely over the past 5 years, and the principal has grown considerably. The renovations on this house cost approximately $350,000. The purchase price was $950,000. Does that answer your question? Jennifer's eyes widened. More than. Wow. And all this time, you were helping us with the kids' expenses, with the house down payment, living so frugally yourself. Because those were my choices, I pointed out, not because I had to. After Jennifer left, I sat on my new sofa, thinking about our conversation. The apology had seemed genuine, but I couldn't quite shake the feeling that it was motivated, more by embarrassment than by true remorse. Still, it was a start. If Jennifer was willing to acknowledge her behavior had been wrong, perhaps there was hope for rebuilding our relationship on more equal footing. The next few days passed in a flurry of party preparations. The caterers confirmed the menu, the jazz trio sent their song list for approval, and the florist delivered arrangements for every room of the house. By Saturday morning, everything was ready. Emma and Tyler came over early to help with the final touches, arranging name cards for the buffet and setting out cocktail napkins embossed with my new address. Grandma, this is going to be the best party ever, Emma declared, surveying the transformation of the living room into an elegant reception space. Way better than Mom and Dad's boring dinner parties. Do I get to stay the whole time? Tyler asked, bouncing on his toes. Even for the grown-up part? Of course, I assured him. You're my special helpers. I need you here for the entire event. The party was scheduled to begin at 2 o'clock, and by 1:30 I was dressed in a pale blue silk dress I'd purchased specifically for the occasion. The caterers were putting final touches on the buffet. The bartender was setting up in the corner of the living room, and the jazz trio was arranging their instruments on the patio. At precisely 2, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of my first guests. I opened the door to find the Hendersons, the Garcias, and several other neighbors from Evergreen Street standing on my porch, all looking eager to see inside the newly renovated house. Welcome, everyone, I said, stepping aside with a warm smile. Please come in and make yourselves at home. For the next hour, I played the gracious hostess, giving tours of the house, explaining renovation details to curious neighbors and introducing people who had lived on the same street for years but barely knew each other. Jennifer, Derek, and Melissa arrived fashionably late, just as the party was reaching its peak. "Mom, this is amazing," Jennifer said, kissing my cheek. "Everyone is talking about the house." "I hope they're enjoying themselves," I said, watching, as Derek made a beeline for the bar. "The caterers have prepared quite a spread." "From Riverside Grill, I noticed," Jennifer said, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "The same restaurant where you told me I'd be living in your basement?" I finished for her. "Yes, I thought the symmetry was appropriate." Jennifer had the grace to look embarrassed. "I deserve that." "Perhaps," I conceded. "But today isn't about the past. It's about celebrating new beginnings." As the afternoon progressed, I mingled with my guests, accepting compliments on the house and deflecting questions about my sudden financial security with practiced ease. I noticed Derek deep in conversation with Brian Cooper, my real estate agent, no doubt trying to extract information about my other property holdings. Good luck with that, I thought. Brian was the soul of discretion, especially given the generous commissions he was earning on my purchases. Around 4 o'clock, as the party was in full swing, I noticed a commotion near the front door. Carlos, my renovation manager, had arrived with a large blueprint tube under his arm. He spotted me across the room and waved, making his way through the crowd. "Mrs. Wilson," he greeted me warmly. "Sorry to interrupt your party, but you asked me to bring the plans for the Henderson project as soon as they were ready. The architect just finished them this morning." "Thank you, Carlos," I said, taking the tube. "Would you mind unrolling them on the dining table? I'd love to get some feedback from my guests." Carlos nodded, moving to the dining room where he cleared a space and carefully unrolled the architectural plans. Curious neighbors gathered around, drawn by the large blueprints. "What's this, Barbara?" Alice Henderson asked, peering at the drawings. "Are these plans for our house?" "Indeed they are," I confirmed. "Just preliminary concepts for the renovations I'm planning after the closing next month." "You bought the Henderson house too?" Melissa's voice rose in surprise, drawing more attention to our conversation. "It's a sound investment," I said casually. "Evergreen Street properties hold their value exceptionally well." Derek pushed his way through the small crowd that had gathered, Jennifer close behind him. "Wait, you're buying multiple properties on the street? How many exactly?" I smiled serenely. "That's a rather direct question, Derek. But since you asked so nicely, I currently own 3 properties on Evergreen Street, with a 4th closing next month." A murmur ran through the gathered neighbors. 3 houses already, plus a 4th on the way? That represented a third of the entire street. "But why this street specifically?" Jennifer asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. "There are plenty of nice neighborhoods in Oak Ridge." "True," I acknowledged, "but Evergreen has a special significance to me. After all, my family lives here." "So this is about being close to us?" Jennifer asked, looking hopeful. "Because you want to be near the kids?" "Partly," I said, "and partly because it's an excellent investment. Property values here have increased by 15% in the last year alone." "Which properties do you own?" one of the neighbors asked, his curiosity overcoming his manners. "This one, of course," I said, gesturing around us. "The Madison place at the corner, which I'll likely be renting out starting next month. The Henderson house, which will be undergoing renovations similar to what I've done here. And I've recently made an offer on the Garcia property as well, which has been accepted." Carlos, who had been silently observing this exchange, stepped forward. "Mrs. Wilson has been a dream client. The renovations we're planning for the Henderson and Garcia properties are going to transform them into the jewels of the neighborhood. We're talking complete modernization while preserving the original character. And raising property values. For everyone," added Brian, who had joined the group. "Barbara's investments are good news for all Evergreen Street homeowners. Each successful renovation increases comparable sales prices for the entire neighborhood." I watched as this information sank in. Most of my neighbors seemed cautiously pleased by the idea that my purchases and renovations would increase their own home values. Only Jennifer and Derek looked unsettled, exchanging worried glances. "Mom," Jennifer said in a low voice, pulling me aside. "Can we talk privately for a moment?" I nodded, leading her to my home office off the main hallway. As soon as the door closed behind us, Jennifer turned to me, her expression troubled. "What are you really doing, Mom? Buying up the street where Derek and I live? This can't be just about investment returns." I regarded my daughter steadily. "What do you think I'm doing, Jennifer?" "I don't know," she admitted. "At first, I thought you were just trying to make a point by moving across from us. But now? 4 houses? Are you planning to buy the entire street?" "Not the entire street," I said. "That would be excessive. But I am interested in acquiring strategic properties as they become available." "Strategic for what purpose?" Jennifer pressed. "Is this some kind of power play? Are you trying to control the neighborhood? Force us out somehow?" I laughed softly. "Force you out? Jennifer, I moved here to be close to you and the children. Why would I want to force you out?" "Then what is this about?" "Because it feels like you're surrounding us. Like you're creating some kind of real estate empire right on our doorstep to remind us that we underestimated you." "Is that how it feels?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Interesting. And if it were true, would it be so terrible? To be reminded that appearances can be deceiving, that people have depths you might not see if you're too quick to judge." Jennifer sank into a chair, her frustration evident. "So this is punishment. For the basement, for the way we treated you." "Not punishment," I corrected her. "Education. There's a difference. And what exactly are we supposed to be learning from this? Demonstration?" Jennifer asked, an edge creeping into her voice. "That's entirely up to you," I said calmly. "Some might learn about respecting others regardless of their apparent resources. Some might learn about the dangers of making assumptions. Some might simply learn that their mother is more than the two-dimensional caregiver they've taken for granted all these years." Jennifer was silent for a long moment, studying me as if seeing me for the first time. "You've changed, Mom. Or maybe, you were always like this and I just never noticed." "Perhaps a bit of both," I acknowledged. "The basement was a catalyst, not a cause. It made me realize how small I'd allowed my life to become, how much I'd defined myself by what I could do for others rather than who I was in my own right." "And who are you?" Jennifer asked quietly. "Beyond my mother, beyond a nurse, beyond this property collector you've become?" I smiled at her choice of words. "I'm still discovering that. But I know I'm someone who values her independence, who won't be relegated to basements or retirement communities against her will. Someone who has plans and dreams of her own that don't revolve around being useful to others." "I never thought of you as just useful," Jennifer protested. "You're my mother. I love you." "Love takes many forms," I said gently. "Some healthier than others. The kind that respects boundaries, that sees the other person as fully human with their own needs and desires. That's the kind I'm interested in now." "And if we can't provide that?" Jennifer asked, her voice small. "What then? You'll just keep buying up the neighborhood, building your empire across the street, watching us from your windows?" "I'm not going anywhere, Jennifer," I said firmly. "I'll be right here, living my life, renovating my properties, being a grandmother to your children. How you choose to engage with me is up to you." Jennifer nodded slowly, then stood. "We should get back to the party. People will wonder where we've gone." "Of course," I agreed, opening the office door. "And Jennifer? The kids are welcome to stay over tonight if they'd like. I've set up their rooms specially." A flicker of something, resentment, envy, resignation crossed Jennifer's face before she composed herself. "I'll ask them. I'm sure they'd love to." We rejoined the party, where Derek was now deep in conversation with Carlos about property values and renovation costs. Melissa hovered nearby, clearly trying to eavesdrop while pretending to examine a floral arrangement. As I moved through my home, accepting compliments and answering questions, I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction settle over me. The party was a success by any measure. My neighbors were impressed, my grandchildren were excited about their sleepover, and Jennifer and Derek had received the message I'd intended to send, even if they hadn't fully accepted it yet. Later that evening, after the last guests had departed and Emma and Tyler were settled in their new rooms, I sat on my patio watching the lights go out across the street in Jennifer and Derek's house. They'd been subdued for the remainder of the party, processing the revelation about my growing property portfolio. I hadn't set out to create an empire when I first decided to buy the Reynolds house. But with each property I acquired, each renovation I planned, I felt more firmly in control of my own destiny. No longer the basement dweller, the convenient childcare provider, the ATM for dance lessons and soccer equipment. Now I was Barbara Wilson, property investor, neighborhood renovator, woman of independent means. The basement had been their mistake. But this new chapter, this was my choice. And as I sipped my wine under the stars, watching over the street that was slowly becoming mine, I felt no regret for the lesson I was teaching. Some educations came at a higher price than others. Jennifer and Derek were simply paying tuition, in the school of consequences. The morning after the housewarming party, I woke to the sounds of Emma and Tyler giggling in the kitchen. I found them attempting to operate my espresso machine, with predictably messy results. "Grandma," Tyler exclaimed when he saw me, "we're making you breakfast." "I can see that," I laughed, surveying the coffee grounds scattered across my pristine countertop. "How about I help with that while you two set the table?" As we prepared breakfast together, pancakes shaped like dinosaurs at Tyler's insistence, I felt a contentment I hadn't experienced in years. This was what I had wanted all along, quality time with my grandchildren in a home where I felt respected and valued. "Mom texted," Emma announced, holding up her phone. "She wants to know if she should pick us up or if you're bringing us home." "What would you prefer?" I asked, flipping a triceratops-shaped pancake. Emma and Tyler exchanged a look. "Can we stay longer?" Tyler asked hopefully. "Your house is way cooler than ours." I smiled. "You're welcome to stay as long as you like. Let's tell your mom I'll bring you back this afternoon." After breakfast, we spent the morning playing board games in the sunroom and exploring the backyard where I'd installed a small vegetable garden. The children were fascinated by the idea of growing their own food, digging their hands into the soil with enthusiasm if not skill. Around noon, my doorbell rang. To my surprise, it was Derek, looking uncomfortable in his weekend golf attire. "Derek," I greeted him, "the children are in the backyard. I wasn't planning to bring them home until later." "Actually," he said, shifting his weight awkwardly, "I came to see you. Do you have a minute to talk?" Curious, I invited him in, calling to Emma and Tyler that I'd be inside for a few minutes. We settled in the living room, Derek perching on the edge of the sofa as if afraid to get too comfortable. "I wanted to apologize," he began, the words sounding rehearsed, "for the basement situation and for how we've treated you. It wasn't right." "Jennifer already apologized," I pointed out. "Did she send you to do the same?" Derek flushed. "No, this is from me. Look, Barbara, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye. I've probably been more focused on finances than on family sometimes." "Sometimes?" I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Often," he amended. "But what you said yesterday about your property investments, it got me thinking. You're not just making a statement to us, are you? This is a serious business venture." I studied him, trying to discern his angle. "It's both. I'm investing in properties I believe will appreciate significantly while also establishing my independence in a very visible way. Derek nodded, leaning forward slightly. That's actually what I wanted to discuss. I have some experience in real estate investment, nothing on your scale, but I understand the market. I thought perhaps we could collaborate. Collaborate, I repeated, keeping my expression neutral. In what capacity? Well, with your capital and my knowledge of local market trends, we could potentially expand beyond Evergreen Street. Create a more diversified portfolio. I could help identify undervalued properties, negotiate deals, manage renovations. He was warming to his topic now, his initial discomfort forgotten. I've always wanted to get more involved in real estate, and with your resources, we could build something substantial together. A family business, if you will. I almost laughed at the transparency of it. Just days ago, Derek had been treating me as a financial burden, demanding rent for a basement. Caught. Now, having glimpsed the extent of my resources, he saw me as a potential business partner, or more accurately, a source of capital for his own ambitions. That's an interesting proposal, I said carefully. Though I'm curious about the timing. You didn't seem interested in collaborating with me when you thought I was just a retired nurse with a modest pension. Derek had the grace to look embarrassed. I know how it seems, but people change, learn from their mistakes. I'm trying to do that. Are you? I asked. Or are you simply adjusting your approach now that you understand my financial position? That's not fair, he protested, though his eyes slid away from mine. Yes. Learning about your resources was a surprise, but it also made me see you differently, made me realize I'd underestimated you. And that's precisely the problem, Derek. I said, my voice gentle but firm. People shouldn't be estimated by their bank accounts at all. Worth isn't measured in dollars. Derek frowned, clearly not following. But your investments, the properties, they show a business acumen I didn't expect. That's what I'm responding to. Yet you never bothered to ask about my experiences or skills before. Never considered that I might have value beyond what I could contribute to your household expenses. I shook my head. I appreciate the apology, Derek, but I'm not interested in a business partnership at this time. His face fell, disappointment and frustration warring in his expression. You're turning me down without even considering the potential? Barbara, we could double or triple your returns with the right strategy. My current returns are quite satisfactory, I assured him. And my investment goals are more complex than simple profit maximization. What does that mean? He asked, frustration winning out. It means I'm investing in my peace of mind as much as in real estate. And right now, that involves maintaining complete control over my financial decisions. Derek stood abruptly. I see. Well, if you change your mind, the offer stands. I should get back to the club. I have a tea time at 1. After he left, I sat for a moment contemplating our conversation. Derek's sudden interest in partnership was predictable if disappointing. He saw my resources as an opportunity, not my independence as a lesson. It was exactly the kind of transactional thinking that had led to my basement banishment in the first place. I rejoined Emma and Tyler in the garden, pushing thoughts of Derek aside. These moments with my grandchildren were what mattered. The genuine connections, not the calculated ones. Later that afternoon, after I'd driven the children home, I received a call from Brian Cooper. Barbara, I have news, he said without preamble. The Millers at number 18 have decided to sell. They weren't planning to list for another few months, but they've heard about your purchases and renovations. They're hoping to strike a deal before going on the market. Number 18, I repeated, mentally mapping Evergreen Street. That's 3 doors down from Jennifer's house, on the same side. Exactly, Brian confirmed. It's smaller than your other acquisitions, just 3 bedrooms, but it's on a double lot with that beautiful oak tree in the backyard. They're asking $875,000. Make them an offer, I said decisively. $800 cash, with a 30-day closing. Let them know we can be flexible on the moving date if they need time to relocate. Will do, Brian said. That would bring your total to 5 properties on the street. If I may ask, what exactly is your endgame here, Barbara? These are significant investments in a very concentrated area. I smiled, though he couldn't see it through the phone. Let's just say I'm creating options, Brian, for myself and perhaps for others as well. After hanging up, I walked to my front window, gazing across at Jennifer and Derek's house. The children were playing in the front yard. Derek's car was absent from the driveway, still at his golf game, presumably, and Jennifer was visible through her kitchen window, preparing dinner. My daughter had always been headstrong, even as a child. She'd fight against lessons she didn't want to learn, resist guidance she hadn't requested. But eventually, when given space to reflect, she would usually come around to understanding. I hoped that pattern would hold true now, though the stakes were higher than disputes over bedtimes or homework. The following week brought a flurry of activity. The Henderson closing was moved up at the seller's request, making property number 4 officially mine 2 weeks earlier than expected. Carlos and his team began drawing up renovation plans, focusing on modernizing the kitchen and master bath while preserving the home's mid-century character. The Millers accepted my offer on property number 5, setting a closing date for the end of the month. Meanwhile, life on Evergreen Street settled into a new rhythm. Emma and Tyler spent every Saturday at my house, sometimes staying overnight. Jennifer and I established a cautious truce, polite but still strained around the edges. Derek kept his distance, his dreams of a business partnership clearly on hold, but not abandoned. 3 weeks after the housewarming party, I received an unexpected visitor, Melissa Grant, Jennifer's friend who had been so eagerly fishing for gossip during her previous visit. "Barbara," she greeted me with a brittle smile when I opened the door. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." "How neighborly of you," I said, stepping aside to let her in. "Coffee?" "Please," she said, following me to the kitchen. As I prepared the drinks, she perched on one of the island stools, her gaze calculating as it swept over the space. "I've been meaning to ask you, these renovations are absolutely stunning. I've been thinking of updating my own kitchen. Would you mind sharing your designer's information?" "Of course," I said, sliding her coffee across the counter. "Carlos and his team did a wonderful job. I'd be happy to connect you." "That would be lovely," Melissa said, taking a delicate sip. "Though I imagine his calendar is quite full with all your properties now. Jennifer mentioned you've acquired several homes on the street?" 5 in total, I confirmed. "Though not all will be renovated immediately." Melissa's eyebrows rose. 5? That's nearly half the street. Barbara, if you don't mind my asking, what exactly are you planning to do with all these houses? I smiled, enjoying her poorly concealed curiosity. "Some are investments, some may be rentals. I'm keeping my options open." "Jennifer seems to think you're making some kind of statement," Melissa said, dropping any pretense of casual conversation. "About how they treated you. About the basement." "Does she?" I asked mildly. "Interesting. Is she wrong?" I considered the question, taking my time with the answer. Let's just say I'm establishing boundaries that should have existed long ago. Creating a physical representation of my independence that can't be ignored or dismissed. "By buying up the neighborhood?" Melissa asked incredulously. "That seems rather excessive." "Perhaps," I acknowledged. "But sometimes a clear message requires bold action." Melissa studied me for a moment, then set down her coffee cup with a decisive click. "Well, I think it's brilliant. They should never have put you in that basement. The way Jennifer talked about it, like she was doing you some great favor by letting you stay there. It always made me uncomfortable." I blinked, surprised by her sudden shift. "You never said anything." Melissa shrugged. "Jennifer and I have been friends for years. It's complicated. But between us, what they did wasn't right. And watching you turn the tables like this, it's the kind of comeuppance that's rare to see in real life. I wasn't entirely sure I trusted Melissa's newfound support, but her honesty was refreshing. Thank you for saying that. Don't thank me, she said, waving a dismissive hand. I should have spoken up sooner. But watching you at that party, seeing Jennifer and Derek realize exactly who they'd been dismissing all this time, it was better than any reality TV show. After Melissa left, I found myself reflecting on her words. Was that how the neighborhood viewed my actions? As some kind of revenge drama playing out across Evergreen Street? It wasn't entirely inaccurate, but it wasn't the whole truth either. This wasn't just about teaching Jennifer and Derek a lesson. It was about reclaiming my own power, establishing my worth independent of my role as mother or grandmother. The following day, I visited the Henderson house, now officially mine, to discuss renovation plans with Carlos. As we walked through the empty rooms, I felt a growing certainty about what I wanted to do with this property. Carlos, I said, stopping in what had been the Hendersons' living room, I'd like to make some changes to the plans for this house. Of course, Mrs. Wilson. What did you have in mind? This property won't be a rental or a flip, I told him. I want to renovate it as a gift for someone. Carlos looked surprised but nodded. Certainly. Do you have specific requirements for the design? Yes, I said, pulling out my phone to show him some images I'd saved. I want it to be perfect for a family with young children. Something modern but warm, practical but beautiful. As we discussed the details, I felt a growing sense of peace about my decision. Sometimes the best education came not from punishment, but from unexpected generosity. That evening, I invited Jennifer to dinner at my house. Just the two of us. No Derek, no children, no neighbors or friends to complicate the conversation. She arrived looking wary, as if expecting some new revelation about my property empire. Thank you for coming, I said, showing her to the dining room where I'd set the table with my best china. I thought it was time we had a proper talk, just mother and daughter. About your real estate takeover of Evergreen Street? Jennifer asked, attempting a joke that fell flat. About family, I corrected her. About what we mean to each other, and what we want for the future. Over dinner, a recipe we'd both loved when she was growing up, I guided the conversation away from properties and finances, focusing instead on memories, on the relationship we'd had before the basement incident had strained it to breaking. Do you remember that apartment we lived in when you were in elementary school? I asked. The one with the yellow kitchen and the fire escape you were never supposed to play on but always did? Jennifer smiled, relaxing slightly. How could I forget? You caught me out there reading with my flashlight at least once a week. You were always so independent, I said fondly. So determined to do things your own way, even when it meant breaking the rules. I wonder where I got that from, Jennifer said, giving me a pointed look that made us both laugh. As we shared dessert, my homemade apple pie, her favorite since childhood, I finally turned the conversation to what had been on my mind. Jennifer, I want you to know that despite everything that's happened, you and the children are still the most important people in my life. She set down her fork, her expression softening. I know, Mom, and I really am sorry about the basement. About all of it. We should have treated you with more respect, more consideration. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But that's in the past now. What matters is where we go from here. Where do we go? Jennifer asked. You're building this property collection all around us. It feels like you're making some kind of point, but I'm not sure I understand what it is anymore. The point, I said carefully, was never about the properties themselves. It was about establishing that I have value and agency independent of what I can do for you or anyone else. That I deserve respect not because I'm wealthy, though that certainly got your attention, but because I'm a human being with my own needs and desires. Jennifer nodded slowly. I think I'm starting to understand that. But 5 houses, Mom? What are you going to do with all of them? That depends, I said, meeting her gaze steadily, on whether you've truly learned the lesson I was trying to teach. And how will you know if I have? Jennifer asked, a hint of her old defensiveness creeping back into her tone. I already do, I said simply. I've been watching you these past few weeks. How you've interacted with me, with the children, even with Derek. There's been a shift, small, but meaningful. Jennifer looked down at her half-eaten pie. He wanted to partner with you, on your real estate ventures. He was furious when you turned him down. I'm aware, I said dryly. His interest was transparently self-serving. It was, Jennifer admitted, but it made me realize something important. I've been looking at our relationship the same way. What you could do for me, how you could fit into my life on my terms. I never stopped to consider what you might want or need. That's a significant realization, I acknowledged. So what do you want, Mom? Beyond teaching us a lesson about respect? What does Barbara Wilson want for herself? I smiled, touched by the genuine curiosity in her question. I want to live independently but close to my family. I want to be grandma to Emma and Tyler without being the convenient basement-dwelling childcare provider. I want to use the resources I've been fortunate enough to acquire to create a legacy that reflects my values. And the houses? Are they part of that legacy? They are, I confirmed. Though perhaps not in the way you might expect. I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. Jennifer, I'd like to give you the Henderson house. Her mouth fell open in shock. What? Mom? No, I can't accept that. It's too much. It's not a gift without conditions, I clarified. The house will be held in trust for Emma and Tyler, with you and Derek as trustees. You'd live there, maintain it, make it a home for the children. But it would be their inheritance eventually, a way to ensure they have security for their futures. But why? After everything that happened? Because you're my daughter and they're my grandchildren, I said simply, because family is still the most important thing, even when we falter in how we treat each other. And because true wealth isn't just about accumulation, it's about what you do with what you have. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything right now, I told her. Think about it. Talk to Derek. The renovations won't be complete for several months anyway. And the other houses? She asked, wiping at her eyes. What are your plans for those? The Madison place will likely become a rental property for now. The Miller house I'm considering transforming into a duplex. There's a shortage of affordable housing in Oak Ridge, and the lot is large enough to support it. The Garcia property, well, I have some ideas, but nothing definite yet. Jennifer shook her head in wonder. When did my mother become a real estate mogul? Around the same time she decided she was no longer content to live in her daughter's basement, I replied with a smile. After dinner, as we stood on my front porch saying goodbye, Jennifer hugged me tightly. Thank you, Mom. Not just for the house offer, but for waking me up, I guess, making me see you as a whole person, not just my mother. That's all I ever wanted, I told her, returning the embrace. For you to see me. As Jennifer walked back across the street to her house, I stayed on the porch watching her go. The lesson had been expensive, financially for me, emotionally for her, but it seemed the education had finally taken hold. In the months that followed, the Henderson house was transformed into a warm, welcoming family home with plenty of space for Emma and Tyler to grow. Jennifer and Derek moved in just before Christmas, selling their original house to a young couple expecting their first child. Derek eventually came to terms with my generosity, though I suspected he still harbored dreams of accessing my resources for his own ambitions. The other properties in my growing portfolio served various purposes, some as investments, some as rental units for teachers and healthcare workers who struggled to find affordable housing in Oak Ridge. one eventually donated to a nonprofit that provided transitional housing for women rebuilding their lives after difficult circumstances. As for me, I remained in my beautiful home across from what had once been Jennifer's house, hosting Sunday dinners for the family, tending my garden, and continuing to acquire the occasional strategic property when opportunities arose. The basement, that had once been my prison, became a distant memory, a chapter closed in favor of new beginnings. Each morning as I sipped my coffee by the front window, watching Emma and Tyler leave for school from their new home, the home I had provided, as both gift and reminder, I felt a deep satisfaction. Not because I had punished those who wronged me, but because I had transformed an insult into opportunity, a basement into an empire, and most importantly, invisibility into recognition. I was no longer just someone's mother or grandmother. I was Barbara Wilson, woman of substance and means, architect of her own destiny. And no one would ever relegate me to the basement again. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.